Did you hear that?
You got it working.
I got it working. What is up, everybody? My name is Chad Brock.
And I'm Zach Bailiff.
Welcome to the 18th, 17th, 18th. I lost count.
Yeah.
18th. It's right up there in the corner. I can't even read it. All right, welcome to the 18th edition of the Orion Podcast. And that was just enough time to pop an Instagram story. Look at me go.
Well, my phone is in use, so I can't.
Well, you know, it's pretty sad that I missed the episode number considering I actually have my glasses on tonight. So, like,
that's true. You should be able to see better than I can.
Yeah, you would think. I can actually see you better.
Smart Chad like Smart Hulk or
Smart Hulk, Smart Chad. No comparison at all. No comparison whatsoever. Oh man, Jason Cassidy in the house watching tonight. What's up, buddy? Good to see you out there.
Hey.
So you got to go. I didn't get to go out fishing. Did you go hunting? You went. You got some hunting in.
Not last weekend. Opening day here rained all day long, and when you're carrying the camera equipment and trying to catch stuff on film, that just does not jive very well. So I was at home last weekend. I got some hard drives backed up that weren't doing too well. Got it backed up, so I saved all my media there and worked on getting some stuff together. I am going out next Saturday, so I'll be in the tree Saturday morning and then on the trail in the Jeeps Saturday afternoon. So we got a Fall Jeep Fest is here, so
that'll be
get
good.
that out of the way, and then we'll be full force into the hunting season.
We need to come out and go to a Jeep Fest. I feel like it'd just be a good time to ride around.
It's a good day. It's a good day.
I don't know how we'd all 6 fit in your Jeep, but it'd be
some decent
interesting.
Trails over there. Mama and the girls will probably just stay home and chill.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and get them out on the trail though. Zoe's not quite 2 yet, so she's not front facing in the car seat yet. But I think we could probably do so for the trail ride, and then put her in the car and get her back home.
Yeah, our parents let us ride around in the back of the truck, no seatbelts. It'll be fine. Yeah. It'll be fine. Oh, yeah.
Back of the truck, back of the car.
Just don't put any pictures on the internet. It'll be fine. Yeah. All right, we have got a very special guest tonight, straight from Kodiak, Alaska, with a bear story that we'll get into as we work through the podcast. But a man with several talents that is chasing a life, chasing the dream in America's last frontier. I think you guys are going to like what you're going to hear tonight. There you go. Spit it all out. It's a lot of words. I'm just going to introduce him. Welcome, Josiah Pleasant.
Hey guys, thanks for having me.
Yeah. Hey man, thanks for being here. Let's make you bigger. There we go. So man, how's Alaska today? I know we had a little small talk before, but tell the people at home how's things in Kodiak today?
4 inches of rain so far today, and it's still pouring. So it's a good day to be on the computer hanging with you guys.
Well, we are glad you made some time for us, and happy to have you. It looks a little darker there. It looks about as dark back there at your back window as it does here. Is it what season are you guys in as far as daylight? How many hours are you guys getting right now?
Daylight's not bad. You're just seeing the darkness of storm clouds. That's just literally blocking the light today. But no, it's getting dark at like 7:30, 8 p.m. right now. Not bad.
Okay.
Oh,
yeah, about the same as here. Yeah, last time we were up there in 16. We were right there at the end of June, beginning of July. And it was, never really got dark, just stayed kind of twilight. And that was a wild feeling.
It's nice. I love it.
Yeah, it's cool. Pretty cool.
So you've kind of been a budding outdoorsman. You've been with us at Jackson Kayak, Orion Coolers, for quite a while. But let's kind of get into, where'd your passion for the outdoors really get going, and how'd you get here?
Yeah, grew up hunting and fishing. My dad showed me the ropes a bit, but you guys in the lower 48 and especially in the Midwest and South, that there's hunting and then there's hunting. And so I did road hunting with my dad when I was a kid, and I still like seeing stuff. And then at a pretty early age, I thought, I'm gonna hike out into it. I'm gonna check it out for myself. And we'd fish from a boat for salmon, and at a pretty young age, actually my first kayak was a kayak we found adrift at sea, called the Coast Guard. Made sure it wasn't a missing persons kayak. It wasn't. So I got my first kayak, and between just backpacking into the woods solo and kayaking, for me, it's a spiritual experience. It's something that brings me peace, brings me joy. And for the lifestyle that I live, it's how I eat. And so, it's pretty integrated for me. So yeah, just at a pretty young age, learning to get away from the crowds, get away from the noise, and make it, several things at once. That's kind of how I live my life.
Very cool. So
did you grow up there?
So grew up in northern Washington. In the summers, we went up to Alaska, but didn't get to move up to Alaska until a few years ago.
Okay.
So, I mean, you've been all over. How did what made you decide that Alaska was that place?
Since I was a little kid, I knew I wanted to be here. Since I got to spend time up here, my dad and I fished the Kenai River in the 90s, back when king fishing was still pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
He caught a 72-pound king. I caught a 62-pound king. There's just a special aspect to a place that still has frontier to it. Southeast Alaska, where I visited often, and then got to move. My first city I lived in was Juno. You go 20 miles past a city and there's no people. You go another 30 miles in, and especially if you start climbing up, animals will encounter you, and they've never seen a person before. And there's not many places like that on Earth left. So it's pretty special.
No, definitely not. So kind of like, you're on all these adventures. You've kayaked in New Zealand, we've seen. Obviously you're kayaking up there. What are some of the differences, kayaking out in these vast open areas that, people like me, we're out here playing on the small ponds and the lakes. What are some of the differences that's like? Obviously you're not a bassing guy, because nobody wants no bass up there in Alaska. That's a cardinal sin up there, I believe.
We throw them back.
Yeah, we do too. We just take pictures first.
Yeah, there's sea bass. I've caught some 35-pound sea bass, but their meat to body ratio is ridiculous. They're got these big old monster heads and little tiny fillets on them, so you got to get a really big one. And when they get that big, they're 30-year-old fish, so you feel kind of bad taking them off their shoals. So the salmon replenish themselves. The best halibut fishing in the world's right here. So they eat pretty dang good. I'll eat salmon and halibut every day. But
the salmon and halibut I had while we were in Alaska was by far it was the best I've ever had.
Yeah. Yeah, it is mildly hilarious watching folks get real excited about 4-pound largemouth bass, but you do what you can where you live. I lived in Arkansas for a bit. I traveled in the summers and worked in Central America, and the rest of the year I was primarily in Arkansas for a stretch teaching at a university. And that you have fun with what's there, and there's a lot of beauty to that. But once you start getting into 100-pound fish that tow you around like a sleigh ride and are 90% meat on them, it's hard to go back to anything else. So I don't know that I'll be going to anything else for the rest of my days. But yeah, it's night and day difference. As far as kayaking itself, we use kayaking as really a safety and survival tool. It's our ship to shore. In a lot of cases, you got to put your boat out into deeper water, and your kayak is what gets you back and forth. We do a lot of floating. My favorite kind of hunting, I let the river do the work for me. So I get my game and then I float down the river with it. And so if you have a kayak with you, that much better. Oftentimes I get into places where I can't even take a full-bodied kayak with me. So I'm just floating down in waders, just kind of scooting along with my game. But, in terms of getting out and rough water, that kind of thing, in Alaska that you are not the biggest, scariest thing. You are absolutely at the mercy of the elements around you. And there's a humility that comes with that. And it changes you. People that recognize that and live with that humility, it changes your worldview on life. When you live in a suburb that's next to, shopping centers and strip malls, it's sometimes easy to believe the hubris that we're the biggest thing there is, and we're just not. And I love that element. At the same time, it's dangerous. Last trip that we went on, I got a good center console aluminum boat, paid a bunch of money for it. Found out that the gentleman that had it before me failed to put just a little bit of liner under the floorboards where your power harness goes from your center console to your outboard. And without that little bit of liner, it was rubbing on an aluminum edge every time that you turn the motor. And eventually, if it's rubbing on that aluminum edge, it's going to split. And I've got to give full credit and grace to my wife. We were out and we were in probably 14-foot seas, and the dang thing just kept stopping. And I'm going, oh wow, well, it must be that the battery just wasn't charged up, because we had gone 2.5 weeks without taking it out, and sometimes the battery needs a little run to get going. And it was the stupid harness, and I had not pulled the floorboards up on it. Fairly new boat to us, and we were in a dangerous spot. And that all it takes is something as simple as that, is some cable rubbing, and all of a sudden you got a short. And so, let alone getting into a smaller vessel, etc. We're on the big ocean in Kodiak, so when a storm gets going, we actually just had a typhoon come through. 40-foot seas is a real thing up here. My prayers and thoughts go out to the folks in Florida that just got whacked by a storm. We got whacked by a storm just as powerful. It's just Alaskans we face storms differently, and you don't hear about it as much, and there's not as many people. But we get some big storms. You'll see funny memes if you search the internet comparing the size of Florida storms versus Alaska storms. You got the Florida storm, and then you got the Alaska storm. So
right.
So weather, tide, bears, they dominate how we have to operate. I'm not in control. I've got my tide book. I get that memorized. I look at my marine forecast. I have that memorized. I learn the bears in an area, and I memorize them. And that's how I shape a trip. You can't really go against those three factors up here. Those three factors are going to dominate how you operate.
So, obviously in Alaska, you've got windows. Obviously you've got a window where you're out gathering and preparing for winter. There's a lot of that goes on in Alaska. There's a lot of preparing from the time it gets warm to the time it gets cold again. What's the look like, from your winter window, getting yourself ready to head out in the spring? What are some of the things that you do to stay in tune during the winter to be pumped up and ready to go the second spring hits?
Well, I'm a kind of guy that I'd rather show you than tell you. That's my 15-year-old dog. And this is the hearth. It's October and the hearth is full. Right. You don't fill it up with firewood, you're not going to make it. The lifestyle up here is just physical. Just basic things like keeping your house warm. you got to be in shape, man. I guess I could go buy fancy splitter, but
Right.
Where's the fun in that?
right. But just right down to going and picking berries. Well, they like to be on hillsides that get sun. Hillsides that get sun are pretty steep. It's got to be real steep for trees not to grow. So
Yeah.
even berry picking is a workout, right? But yeah, I mean, it's just everything that I'm doing is physical. And then you're really hitting it hard. I always find myself before a storm comes in, and we've got a 3-day storm right now that started last night. I mean, I'm just racing, and you just push, and I can do that to my detriment. I sometimes push too hard, and I'm learning to find time to slow down and smell the roses, but it's an Alaskan thing, man. While there's daylight and while you can move, I mean, you hit it hard, and that's kind of a way of life up here. But there's a balance in it, and there's definitely a beautiful rhythm in taking what nature gives you. We have 5 runs of salmon. When each of the runs of salmon are going, you figure out when the apex of that run is, and you go and get your fish, and you don't worry about chasing, the back end or the front end of a run if you can help it, right? You just get them when they're right there. When deer are rutting, you go after them, they'll talk right back to you and come running after you. I've had bucks chase me down, and it's hilarious. It's a lot of fun, but there's a time to do it when it's just really streamlined. So yeah, I mean, there's a rhythm that kind of helps with things too. So you're not necessarily always going upstream, but most everything's a lot of work. I mean, all the best hunting and fishing that I engage in, I'm going where people don't go, and to go where people don't go, you got to do what other people aren't willing to do. And so
absolutely.
It's just work. It's a lot of hard work. And there's experience and knowledge that goes in it too. And then you're around it enough, and you start to perceive and sense the elements more like the animals do. They're way better than I am, for sure, but you start to see things through their eyes. I always find that about a day and a half, 2 days into a trip, my sense of smell is totally different. I'm all of a sudden taking in things that I don't when I'm in town. And so there's a lot of that comes into it, and just allowing your senses to be heightened, that kind of thing.
Now, what are some of the longer hunts that you'll do?
Goat hunts tend to be longer because you got to get up and into where they're at, and then getting back out can be pretty tough. I'm gonna shy away from double mountain crossings going forward. My goat last year, we ended up crossing 2 mountain ranges, kind of down twice. And that's a lot harder when the pack is full. So,
yeah,
that's a good problem, though.
Yeah.
And those mountain goats aren't skinny either.
No. Big Billy's 400 pounds. So yeah, going straight down is definitely the way to do it if I can help it. So yeah, we're gonna try and do that this winter. They're about furred up now, so it's about time.
Yeah, that's one I hope to experience. I'm drawing points in Colorado. I don't know if I'll ever draw that tag, but that's one I hope to draw eventually.
Yeah.
Now, as far as coming back to the States, and work and different things like that, do you ever travel back to the States to do any hunting and fishing, or do you just primarily I'm here now and this is the deal?
It doesn't get any better than up here. So as far as hunting and fishing goes, no, it's Alaska for me. But in terms of work, I travel to the West Coast. I'm currently responsible for the state of Oregon for my day job, in addition to Alaska. So get to do a little bit of travel, coming down to the lower 48, meetings in Seattle, that kind of thing. I have family in the Seattle area. So I'll do a little bit of travel. It's nice to break up the winter monotony sometimes too. Go see.
I can imagine.
Remember what it's like to go to a Costco or something like that. But,
yeah.
Now, town of Kodiak, how big is that area?
You mean number of people?
Yeah, people wise.
It's listed as 5,000 people. Largest Coast Guard base in the world's here. So you've got a ton of coasties. You got a pretty robust tourist season that goes May to September. So, all told, that can boost up to, 13, 14, 15,000 in the high months. But winter time, it gets a little quiet.
Yeah, I've got
I can imagine
a friend up there right now. He flew into Kodiak. They're doing a caribou and blacktail this week, so interested to see how that goes. Reindeer, sorry, yeah,
yep.
Reindeer and blacktail.
It's weird that they dropped reindeer off on the south part of the island, and they kind of scoot around down there. But yeah, they're out there.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to hear his story when he gets back.
I hope he was working on his leg day before that hunt.
Yeah, no doubt.
So any reindeer action for you, or do you go that far? You just got an area where you like to go, or you chasing mainly the goats? Is that your thing?
I went caribou hunting last fall. Went to Adak. Adak's further out in the Aleutians, so when you hear jokes about people seeing Russia, you're a little bit closer to being able to see Russia from there.
Right.
But they're proper caribou out there, so quite a bit bigger.
Right.
And so yeah, it was fun. There aren't animals that move like they do. They're not spooking and running, and yet you're going as fast as you can to catch up to where they're going to pop out at the next draw. And I mean that they just move.
They just move and move constantly, it seems like.
Yeah. But no, the reindeer, you can get a tag for them and go after them, but they move enough that it's a little bit different than a lot of your hunting that you do for other animals, where you can learn an area and somewhat predict that they're going to be there. And they're not native to here, and so their movements and everything, they're probably fair to say they're still figuring things out just the same way we are.
Yeah, we're hoping to get a fly-in caribou hunt booked. I don't know if we'll get it in next year or not, but if not next year, the fall after that should be fun.
Yeah.
Now, so for hunting and different things, do you pretty much just stay on the island, or do you ever cross back over into the big part of the state?
Yeah, Juno's on the mainland, and so
Right.
I'll spend a fair amount of time there. And there's an island just off of Juno called Admiralty Island. The Tlingit name for Admiralty is Kutsnuwu, which means Fortress of the Bears. Highest density brown bear population in the world. I love that place. I've got a little boat stashed over there, and when I get the chance, go back and enjoy Admiralty as well. But yeah, I'm kind of split my time between Kodiak and Juno.
Very nice. Yeah, it does break it up a little bit, especially, when you're on an island. I mean, you're just on an island out in the middle of the Pacific.
Yeah, it's funny. Juno is a part of the mainland, but the way the mountains range and the ice field is shaped, there's no road going in and out. So it's just the same as living on an island there. So it's pretty well living two island type situations. Although Juno has a Costco. Juno doesn't have a Walmart. Kodiak has a Walmart. When I need to go get some popcorn or something, I'll stop in there, get my $1.50 hot dog and call it a day.
There you go. Well, I'm sure, a hot dog every now and then ain't too bad. Do you ever, I mean, come on, ballpark. They plump when you cook them.
I can't tell you the last time I ate a hot dog.
You need to have better 4th of July, Zach.
Well, up until this year, I had elk steak in the freezer. So 4th of July, I was grilling elk steak.
But
you mentioned the brown bears. Have you had a brown bear tag since you've been up there?
I've been bluff charged a few times. It's known scientifically that they can sense and they can smell what's going on, with your pheromones and what's going on with you. And I'm confident in doing what I'm doing. I try to stay humble and I try to stay on top of things, which can be stressful because I'm taking in, 12, 15 things at the same time to make sure I'm on point, especially running on the water, dealing with weather, tides, etc. But I believe that operating with confidence, knowing their behavior, knowing how they operate, that's the number one thing you can do to keep yourself safe. A gentleman came out with a group that I hunted with a couple years ago, and he was a little bit rambunctious as far as the bears went, kind of riled up. I've got a half Boykin Spaniel, half chocolate lab, and she gets these blonde tips on her fur, and she's got a dark brown coat. And he kept mentioning, like, I hope she doesn't startle me. I hope we don't shoot her. I'm like, these bears are 8 feet tall to 9 feet
Yeah.
tall. If you confuse my 65-pound dog, you got a problem.
Yeah.
And I don't share that in jest, but he was a little jumpy, and sure
Right.
enough, a sow charged him, and she would have taken him out. And so that sow had to be put down because it was him.
Right.
I've never been in that situation, and I think there's definitely, you can be in the wrong time at the wrong place with bad timing, but I think if you can really watch what you're doing, for the most part, you can keep yourself, fairly safe. But crazy stuff does happen, and I'm here to vouch for Orion Coolers, and that sometimes you need a cooler that's bear proof, because you forget to do everything that you should to keep your coolers locked tight, and you need something that the bear can whack at and not destroy. So yeah.
Now
Go ahead.
Real quick here, while I've got everything pulled up, I am going to share screen, and we're going to show the bear video.
Show the bear video.
So we're going to show the bear video, and I'll let you walk us through it. You can go ahead and talk. I'm going to, let's see if I can actually figure this out. Share screen. Present screen. There we go. Entire screen. Come on. Share audio. No. Well, there. Click on it. All right, there we go. Look at us. Let's walk. Fancy. All right, Josiah, I'm going to let you walk us through what's kind of happening here.
Yeah, it's a juvenile bear figuring out his way in the world, and he's sussing me out. You can see him kind of pounding the ground and prancing a little bit. He's just checking me out. But you can tell I'm standing my ground. I'm not moving. And my dog, my bear dog, is at my feet, and she's ready to get in the mix if she has to. But you can see him. He's a cute little bear, and you can also see that there's salmon in the stream, so he's also checking his salmon out. So.
Man, they are cool critters, that's for sure.
Yep, they're pretty smart.
You know what? I met a guy up there. I've seen a lot of his stuff on social, but I met him a few years ago at ATA. Cole Kramer. I don't know if you've heard the name or know him, but he guides brown bears up there in Kodiak.
Yeah,
and they get into some giants up there where they're hunting.
Yeah, there's 10.5-foot bears up here. They're the biggest in the world. So there's some big boys.
Now they're they're related to the polar bear in that area, right?
I mean, there's just lineage, right? So
Lineage.
you go back far enough, and there was a split. But your Admiralty bears, your Kodiak bears, there's just closer linkage. But they're still plenty brown, and they still have brown bear habits. But
Right.
some of that size and just proximity to big ocean, I think they're what would you say, their break apart from that polar bear line was more recent than other bears. So
Right.
Now, do you get into any polar bears up there?
no, you got to go all the way up, kind of on the north rim of the Arctic Ocean. So they're in Alaska, but the parts of Alaska that they hang out in, unless you're working on an oil rig, you're not likely to run into them.
Got it.
Well, that ain't too bad. No, I think you've probably been closer to a bear than I've ever wanted to be. That's for sure.
Yeah.
I've been real close to a black bear.
Yeah.
I don't know if the black bear bothers me as much as a brown bear.
They don't me, but
I'm laying on a 6'8" cinnamon right here.
oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So let's
we had a little black bear in Colorado one night, just sleep all night right up against our tent, right against the foot of the tent.
Oh wow.
He woke us up in the morning.
Wow.
He was pretty small juvenile, probably 125 pounds or so, probably not long weaned off mom, and I think he saw the big round dome tent and just made him feel comfortable,
Yeah.
The question is, did he snore or did you snore?
We didn't know he was there until we started kind of kick around in the morning, kind of starting to wake up a little bit, and then something all of a sudden just hit the bottom of our tent. We thought somebody had walked up and kicked our tent until we unzipped the doors and saw him take off.
Jeez.
He was trying to tell you his favorite mountain house.
Yeah, well, he could have came in and just kept us warm all night. Would have been, at least courteous, but.
Now let's so you've got a little bit of a story with the Orion Cooler and a pretty good testimony. I'm gonna kind of let you walk everybody through that and kind of tell us what happened with that.
Yeah, the Orion Coolers, they've got those nice rubber locks on the front. Puts a pretty good seal on the cooler. A lot of guys up here use Yeti coolers. Little side note, and this is how much I enjoy the Orion Coolers. 107 shipping containers holding Yeti coolers when it's the sea off of the coast of Washington, off the Olympic Peninsula, and they're washing up here, and
wow.
Guys are finding them, and I'm kind of like, well, I like Orion Coolers. I don't have to scout that hard for a Yeti cooler, but having your higher end cooler that's got that good rubber seal, good lock on it, man, it's important. My issue on this trip that we're talking about, Orion, the biggest cooler that we're making is an 85, and I need to get myself an 85, and I'm going to be doing that here pretty soon. But I just have a 35 right now, and I used a 162 liter igloo cooler, big enough that I can pretty well put all my quarters in it and not need to worry about finagling space and keep everything real cold. Lots of ice water bottles, that kind of thing. And so I've always brought that. And the spot that I went to, I hadn't scouted and spent time in. Still, I could spend the rest of my life learning country here. And when you go to a new area, you don't know how the bears operate. And so I take my dogs and they kind of manage camp, and they've done a fantastic job of that. Never had an issue. Dozens of times I'll come back and there's bear tracks circling within a 40-50 yard periphery of the camp, but they don't come into it because, believe it or not, these big old brown bears, they don't want to tangle with a dog. And a lot of that's the training with the dog and working with the dog so that they can show the proper aggression at the proper time, being defensive of your camp. But it's life or death for us. If a bear tears up an outboard, if a bear tears up your kayak, you're not getting home. You're stranded. And I carry an in reach, but who are you going to call?
Right.
Come and get you out of some of these places. And so keeping your camp intact is essential. And so this new area decided to leave the dogs because I didn't know how aggressive the bears were. Didn't want to step into a situation that was pretty hairy, and it was an alpine hunt. So I knew that, I may be gone up in the alpine for 2, 3, 4 days. And if that's the case, that's a long time for the dog to go off of just, a bowl of food and a bowl of water. And so I had the 162 set up, just sleeping gear, extra backup gear, safety stuff, and then, other things in the Orion. But I did have some food in the 162, and they just don't have the seal like an Orion does.
Right.
And so inevitably, I'm sure they're, to a bear's nose, there was a scent of food there, and that's definitely on me. But you kind of get spoiled, using an Orion that you can put stuff in it, and you don't have to worry about it as much. I've had bears flip my Orion end over end, it ending up 20, 30 yards from where I had it, and it's fine. Didn't release anything. Maybe they scuffed up the foam pad on the top, but that's about it in terms of damage. I came back in my 162 after this alpine hunt, which I did get a Boone and Crockett blacktail, so it was a sweet hunt. But the 162 was disassembled. I mean, 1, 2 pieces all over the beach. I mean, it was a yard sale. And so I'm walking through, picking stuff up, collecting stuff. Orion was fine, not worse for wear. Didn't even mess with it. Probably because the seal on it. I mean, it does create a vacuum when you close it, right?
It does.
I don't think the bear could smell anything in it. And so other than getting Orion to, let's start making, 160, 165 liter coolers.
I'm just going to have
that. There's a lot of requests for the big cooler. There is some requests for the big cooler. And I think, hopefully one day we can get that done, and I think it'd go over pretty well for the outdoors community to have a cooler that size.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
when you're in the West, and if you're getting out in the backcountry, I mean, you need it. And then
Mhm.
for boats too, I mean, it's just a game changer. I just
Yeah.
use big coolers on my boat for everything, and it's the way to go. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm gonna start running a couple of 85s now. Now that I've had this happen, I've gone, I think, 6 years, really getting after it in Alaska, and another couple of decades visiting in the summers, off and on, and never had an issue like that. And once you have all your stuff torn up, it's enough to say, okay,
Worth the
I need to
investment.
go with the
Yeah.
right coolers from now on.
Well,
But
and your
yeah,
gear's valuable there. I mean, it's twice as valuable as what it would be here.
oh yeah, and you got to have backups of everything. I mean, we say
Yeah.
2 is 1, 1 is none.
One is
So
done. Yeah.
that cooler had my backups of things that had to get going. I think the bear chewed up my dog's backpack, because I keep a bunch of essentials in the dog backpack. So even though she didn't get to make the trip, her backpack did. And even just the scent of whatever scent had been on my dog from the last hunt, the bear ate the freaking backpack.
Oh, wow.
Tore up a bunch of stuff. I will say it was pretty interesting. The bear did not eat all the Mountain House packs.
That I believe.
Didn't want to mess with him, but yeah, after an experience like that, I mean, anybody who's asking, go ahead and go with a cooler that's going to be locked tight, keep that scent down, and also be in such a way that when they're getting those 6-inch claws, that they can't just rip it straight open. And this the cooler that got torn up, it was no slouch. I mean, this is a sturdy cooler, but it's not built to the standards of an Orion, and it bit the dust. I'm going to try and epoxy it up just because I need as many coolers as I can running trips, and it's nice when you got a rotation of coolers that are stinky and need washed, and freshies that are ready to go. So I'll try to resurrect it as a Frankenstein cooler just to have the story on it. But got to get me some 85s up here. The trouble is the airlines want to charge me extra because it doesn't fit the size of the airline regular luggage. So they want to charge me oversized for it. But
they don't want to pick it up.
Yeah.
Is what it amounts to. They're so heavy, they don't want to pick them up.
Well, so they weigh 42 pounds, so I can still put 8 pounds of gear in it and be underweight. But the issue is the dimensions. So
it's
the airlines like to be finicky like that.
Yeah.
You had some trouble getting some stuff shipped back with your elk, didn't you?
It was getting there. They lost my my bow case and my suitcase full of gear. But
that's flying right now, period. I think when Kim went out to DC, they lost her luggage and her flight got canceled. So they lost her luggage and she never even left the airport. So that was fun.
Oh my word.
So any travel people out there, we're sorry. We said it. It is what it is. But yeah, the flush mount latches on the Orion coolers, for people that haven't been around one, the latches are definitely flush, where the latches on most of your coolers set off of the cooler, and it's just an easy place. Like Josiah said, it's an easy place for a bear to get its claw in and actually pull the latch off and rip it out. And that's one of the things that makes the Orion grizzly bear proof. And it's just awesome to have a big, bad rotor-molded cooler. Your friends will think highly of you if you buy one. Visit us at jacksonkayak.com for all your Orion coolers. We just dropped the prices. I needed to do that. I forgot to do that at the start of the show.
You got to pay the bills.
You got to pay the bills. 15% off sale at jacksonkayak.com too. Yeah, find your local dealer. So anyway, what's the winter look like? I mean, do you guys get iced in, or you pretty much open water all the time?
Not ice is over in the bays. I mean, every fall is variable. I mean, so far, I think this is our third massive storm that we've had coming through, one of them being a typhoon. And so any of your hunting and fishing, you're just working around those storms. The cold isn't really the issue yet. It's in the 40s because we're surrounded by the Pacific Ocean, so it keeps it pretty temperate here. Juno's pretty close to the same, except Juno has 200 miles of glaciers behind it, so it gets cold once you get up in the mountains there.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, if we get a mild fall, a mild early start to winter, we can get all the way to Thanksgiving and it hasn't gotten super cold yet. So we can kind of keep getting after it. The halibut eat the salmon. We're in our last run of salmon now, which are coho, our silver salmon. And so I'd say they're middle run on a lot of the rivers right now. So I've got another 2 weeks to chase them. And as long as they're around, halibut are still chasing salmon. So the halibut will sit in the estuaries and they will eat salmon whole. So I'll be chasing halibut for another week or two.
That's wild.
Then the salmon turn off, and then the bears start kind of figuring out if they're gonna try to rest a bit. Some of them stay restless and stay awake. So bears don't go full hibernation; they go into torpor. So they slow their heart rate down, they slow their metabolism down. I think the best description for our audience would be they go into full Netflix and chill mode. They just want to really take it easy, relax, find a nice snuggly cave, hang out with their buddy and take it in. But you get hungry bears that get after it all the time. And that's when you get the really dangerous bears, bears they just didn't find the food when the food was to be had. And so then they're really making poor decisions. So it's sad. Our salmon runs are not what they were, just offshore trawling and international waters, the ocean warming up. Kodiak doesn't have many issues at all with its rivers. Our rivers are pretty much intact, but salmon runs are just not what they were. And so the bears are trying to find food some way, somehow. Their numbers are down in some areas, or they switch, their eating habits. Salmon are down enough in some areas that the bears are hitting berries when they should be hitting salmon. And you got all sorts of spawned out dead salmon in a river, and the bears are on the hill eating berries because they've just kind of given up on some of the runs. It's interesting. But you just have to manage that and what that looks like. But pretty well, when the bears start going into torpor, that's your cue that winter's on. So another couple weeks here, and then it'll settle in.
Now, you brought up the salmon runs, and that is actually something that I wanted to ask you. Listening to the April Vokey podcast and several different ones, I've definitely heard about, the salmon decline and different things. Is there any type of conservation going into that to try to alleviate that stress and help them come back, or not much they can do?
Yeah, it'd be your legislation. So, just how you manage your waters commercially. So we have direct ownership over that. As voters, get in touch with, whatever entity that you can within the areas where there are fish, and there's quite a lot we can still manage. Our sport fishing is just, it's such a small slice of the pie. It's not that it's inconsequential, but you're talking a drop in the bucket. So be responsible. If you're going to go out and fish, best practices, don't kill anything that you're not going to eat, and just be mindful that those fish represent the next generation. But in terms of what folks can do, I mean, it's legislation on commercial fisheries, and it's legislation on how we really engage the international waters conversation. There's trawlers coming from Asia that they peel every living organism off the ocean. I mean, everything. Doesn't matter what it is, juvenile fish, sea mammals, you name it. It's going in, and that's what's done it. And so there's not a whole lot we can do there. The idea of the ocean, becoming more acidic or warming, that's a pretty hard tide to turn. There's individual personal choices you can make on a daily basis to live a cleaner, more sustainable life. And I choose to do that. Obviously, that's a hot topic conversation for a lot of people, but I take it as a personal choice to do the best that I can with what I have. But I'd say legislation is the best bet in places that don't have their rivers dammed up. If you have a dam on your river, you got to take the dam out, because that's
right.
Not to be too crass about it, but the salmon are not going to make babies if there's a dam. It's over. I mean, complete game over. Not too far from where I got to salmon fish all the time upstream, there's a river called the Elwha, and it was 20 years of legislation, tribes, sport fishermen fighting and finally got the 2 dams off of the Elwha River, and the salmon are coming back. Steelhead are exploding because they took the dam off. Alaska's different because, it's the last frontier. We haven't screwed it up quite as much because we haven't been here as long. Russia owned it before we did. And the Russians just tried to peel, all the fur-bearing mammals off. They didn't do a whole lot else. They were just here to collect pelts. So in terms of Alaska, it's not as messed up because we haven't been here as long. Some of the, an Alaskan's called a sourdough. You've earned your sourdough when you've lived through at least one hard winter. A lot of times it takes several, then you're really a sourdough. But the old timers, the sourdoughs, say that we're basically 30, 40 years different than what Washington and Oregon look like, that it'll be about the same. And that has rung true for BC. I used to fish in British Columbia. You won't catch me going down there for anything anymore. Their runs are toast. I mean, totally toast.
Yeah.
So what happened in Washington state in the 90s with the salmon run collapse there, BC's experienced it, and now areas of Alaska are starting to face it too. So unless folks make large scale changes with how we manage our resources, it's going to head that direction. You're going to have these, last bits of the frontier that stay on probably at least for my lifetime, that are still pretty nice. And they're only nice because it takes moving heaven and earth to get there. And those are the last places that are going to be nice. But everything's kind of heading that way.
Now, as far as the water's warming and stuff like that, I mean, as a resident living there for the past few years, I mean, is that something that you're seeing?
So our inland waters are significantly impacted by rivers coming off the mountains. Mm-hmm. So that really maintains a far more constant temperature than open ocean. Mm-hmm. Salmon's life cycles is predominantly at sea. And when I say at sea, hundreds of miles out to sea.
Right.
And so that's very different than just the local waters that I'm fishing close in, that are really replenished if they're getting warm by cold water coming off the mountains through the rivers. So when you talk about your ocean acidification, that they've got the North Pacific blob, that's not right in close to the shore, right? That's way out at sea. There's not a whole lot we can do to change that other than, if billions of people decide I'm going to do a better job of being a steward of the resources that I have. And that's a tall order, but it starts with me. And so that's all I can manage as far as that goes.
That's, it does. It starts with one. And I think, any advice and being an advocate for that is always a good thing for any type of people, especially, when it's coming from somebody that's seeing things and seeing the impacts firsthand as far as being there. And like you said, BC, Washington, I mean, any podcast that you listen to, any fly fishing podcast, they're going to talk about that as far as the decline in the fishing in those areas. It's a pretty tough thing when you look at it.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most important things, and you're starting to see this more and more, is our purchasing habits. And I truly believe this. I'm getting ready to get an 85 or 2 from Orion. Those would be coolers that I pass on to my kids, man. And making decisions about gear that I don't go and replace every 2 to 3 years, that ends up in a landfill, right? That nice 162 that just got torn up, I'm not even taking that to the landfill because I'm not a guy that wastes anything. But that was not necessarily a cooler that was going to be passed down to grandkids, kind of thing.
Right.
But, a good Orion, if you take care of it, don't drop it off the truck going down the road, that kind of thing. But I think if we make good choices with our purchasing, we need so much less than we think we need. And so making choices that, just regenerating what we do. I mean, my trash bags don't have much trash in them because I compost everything I can and recycle what I can't compost. And then, running my wood stove and fire pit and that kind of thing, any good paper trash that I can burn, it goes into that. Right. And so I don't have a lot of trash. Well, if everybody collectively decided to do that, it makes a big difference. But our consumer habits are huge with what we can do to make a positive impact. And the way we think about food, I view food as life. It really is life. Most everything, I'm eating a coho salmon right now. excuse my dinner, but that was a life that I took, and that's precious. I do try to target bucks mostly, because it only takes a couple of bucks to fertilize 1,000 hens, and so
Right.
I'm making some pretty conscious choices with my food, but I don't take it lightly. And there's a lot of beauty in that. It's just the value that goes into it, and I'm probably a fairly healthy individual eating mostly salmon and halibut and venison and mountain goat.
I guarantee it, man.
Absolutely.
I think I'm living a life where to waste would be sacrilegious. It would be wrong to waste any of this, because I know the time and effort and value that went into it. So I don't waste a thing. I mean, I'm now guilty of hauling my meat thousands of miles, putting so much money into it because of the value that I place on the lives that go into my plate. And so there's a lot that I think is said for that, folks that understand the value of what it took to put into what they have. So yeah.
Well, and it's go ahead, Zach.
Those meals and your connection to them, I mean, they just mean so much more, and even sometimes taste just different when you're the one that's put your hands on it from the time that animal was still breathing on the hoof to the time it hit your plate, for a meal with you and your family.
I'm more Cherokee than anything else, and I think there's inherently something in me that makes me think, all right, I'm eating something that knew how to climb mountains real good. I'm gonna get ready for a mountain hunt. I'm eating something that has excellent vision, excellent hearing, going in. That's a part of me now. And, there's a lot of thinking and belief that goes into that. And I don't know that that's necessarily wrong thinking, but scientifically, I know it's good for me. So
it can't hurt,
right? It's the best quality meats that you're going to find. I mean, it's not been influenced in any way, shape, or form by us as people.
So we say that, and then I'll throw this out. So this big old buck that I got, and he's a monster. I mean, just biggest blacktail I've ever seen. When I walked up to him, you guys have heard of ground shrinkage. I mean, this guy kept getting bigger.
He grew,
and bigger. And I go to turn him over because sow and cubs had been wandering below me in the valley, and I wanted to hurry up and get moving. My wife was actually taking video on the mountain up above me because I had to skirt around an entire mountain to head him up to get the wind right. You just got to play the wind with everything. And so she was laughing at how much I ran to get him, but it worked. When I turned him over, he had a testicle this big.
Oh, wow.
And I got big hands. I mean, his testicle was huge. And I'm going, what is going on here?
Yeah.
And he was in velvet. So he had a cactus coming off his velvet. I don't know if you ever heard of the cactus buck, but just an overabundance of testosterone. I mean, just, all the pills that these companies are selling, they need what this guy had. he was after it. And she was laughing. She's like, well, maybe that's why you didn't see that many bucks, because he was servicing every doe within 100 miles here. I looked it up, and it is a thing that's occurred, because I was kind of wanting to make sure, wow, did this guy have something crazy going on? I'm getting ready to eat him. And it's also something associated with just some sort of chemical attachment to kelp that washes on the beach. And in the wintertime, our deal, we call them beach donkeys. They go on the beach and they're eating kelp. And so they get this weird stuff that's in our oceans, and it can kind of get influenced, and their lifestyles or their life cycles are shorter than ours. And so even though substances that, impact them in, a negative way, they get, grapefruit sized testicles, it's still totally fine to eat. But, the interesting thing about that is he was totally fine to eat, but it had me wondering, like, how far off the map am I? And yet I'm still finding that there's influence of horrible decisions that we've made, and it's impacting animals that I'm hunting. I mean, you can't get any more remote. And yet, because this guy and this guy's mother had eaten kelp on a beach that had, who knows, like traces of Fukushima or something in the kelp,
right?
He was more, I guess, susceptible to a crazy testosterone gene that made his testicle explode. So
that's interesting that's the cause of like a cactus buck in blacktails, because I've seen the cactus bucks in mule deer, and I don't know what necessarily causes that, but that's interesting. That's kind of what
there was I started Googling it. It was one of those things where you start Googling and you're like, oh gosh, what's going to pop up when I Google this? I Googled it and like, praise the Lord, like first hit was Alaska fishing game, like Kodiak, like, okay, yes, nothing weird. And it was a full on article, and it was like 30% of bucks they were finding, this interesting phenomenon, probably because there were enough folks saying like, hey, what's going on here? But totally good to eat. But boy, he was a big boy. But it's interesting. Like I had heard that some of your best meat is in hermaphrodite animals, that like some chromosome doesn't jive the right way, and then the meat's real good. And so I've researched into a little bit of that stuff, but this was my first encounter with an animal that exhibited something beyond my initial understanding.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Now, you guys like to take some photos while you're up there as well. I've seen some of your photography, and man, you've got some beautiful photos. Is that your wife's passion that you get out there and do the picture snapping?
Oh man, we both like to take photos. On my end, there's definitely something to be said for just enjoying the moment completely and not taking photos and not feeling the need to shout about it. The past few years, I've been a part of so many experiences that are just unbelievable. And I love taking them in. I do, love to have photos. Actually, I was on a moose hunt, and this was probably a fairly seminal moment for me. But I was on a moose hunt, and moose get pretty randy. And they'll respond to calls very aggressively. And I mean, a big bull is 1,400 pounds.
Yeah.
And so I got in this valley, and, I was feeling pretty confident about my moose call, and I start seeing some shapes coming over a ridge, and I'm like, oh, cool. I got something coming in. And then I got another glimpse of the shapes, and I thought, why am I seeing three? Well, shoot, I think it might be wolves. Not 10 minutes later, I mean, the first time that I glassed these shapes, they were a mile away. Right. 10 minutes later, this sow grizzly is snapping trees, and she's got two cubs with her, and they're just super silver cubs. But the calling and kind of engaging with them that way, it's pretty fascinating. And I remember being super regretful that I didn't take any photos, and at the same time, when they walked up on me, you see something going by and you get excited, and then usually it's about that time you remember, I haven't peed in like 6 hours. I need to pee. And so I have my pants down when she started busting alders in front of me.
Oh man!
I have my rifle with me, and I'm just standing there like, oh man. And I wasn't afraid. I was enjoying it. stood my ground, and she figured out I wasn't a moose and she wasn't going to mess with me. But I didn't take any photos, and I thought, oh man. That's, and I kind of try to channel back to that first, like, really intense brown bear encounter. And I kind of wish that I'd taken photos, but then on the other hand, kind of nice to just enjoy it and be in the moment. So
yeah,
there's a catch-22 with those moments. So sometimes I like to leave the camera put away, and sometimes it's nice to have the memories visually there too.
Yeah, without a doubt. Well, it is about the hour mark, and I know you have got another meeting that you have got to get to. So I'm going to let you kind of tell everybody where to find out more about you, where to follow you on the social channels, and thank anybody that you want to thank.
Yeah, it's even just being on this podcast is a part of my serving as a fishing team ambassador for Jackson Kayak, and I'm just excited to see the organization be a positive influence in the outdoor community. It's something that I stand by and I enjoy being a part of. Excited to see it grow up here in the north. I mean, we definitely use it more than just recreation, but for our lifestyles up here. And so excited to see some growth. Hopefully we can see an uptick and maybe getting some Orion Coolers into people's hands. Why spend days searching the beach for a lost Yeti cooler when you can buy an Orion today?
There you go.
There you go.
Yeah, the paddles that I'm using on the boat and the kayak bending branches paddles, they're great. Man, getting those carbon paddles when it's freezing, that's really nice on the hands. Sick and tired of holding on to cold aluminum.
I bet.
Really nice to get a nice carbon paddle in your hands. Started using Huto game bags this year and really excited for just the lightweight long range stuff. So Michael's a great guy running that company. Check those game bags out if you need a really good backcountry game bag solution. Stick it straight into your cooler. It'll work fine. Mm-hmm. I've been using these Advanced Elements inflatable kayaks when I can't take a rigid kayak with me, and they're great. If you're looking for a ship to shore you can stow on your boat for safety, something you can carry into backcountry, check them out. I've been just really blessed to get some good gear out on these adventures, and I'm a guy that has to live by that gear. There's been plenty of trips where if the gear doesn't make it, I'm not making it. So, if you want to follow these guys, check out their gear and check that out. If you're wanting to come up to Alaska, check our company out. It's Last Frontier Ventures. Really kind of getting established here in Kodiak and getting people out on the water. It's a blast. So feel free to reach out to me. You can find me on Instagram, Fishing for Good. So thanks, guys, for having me.
Hey, Josiah,
Yeah.
thank you
Thanks
for being here. I hope you'll have you back during the winter. Man. We'll all be bored during the winter, so you can come back during the winter.
Yeah.
We'll talk. We've got more to talk. I felt like we was just starting to get rolling. So
we'll all sit around and dream about what we'll do when the weather warms up.
Exactly.
You can hold me accountable. I've got two goat permits, so next time we talk, I better at least have a goat down. So
I look forward to hearing about that.
Yeah, keep us posted. We want to hear about it. But I will let you go because I know you got a jet, and I know you probably got stuff to do before your next meeting. So I will. We will talk to you here soon, Josiah.
Sounds great. Thanks.
All right, man. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you, man.
Bye.
Episode number 18.
Yeah.
I missed the button. Look at me go. There it is. But thanks everybody for watching episode 18. We hope you enjoyed it. I know we enjoyed it. We learned. I like learning. I think that's
Alaska's always a place that's really intrigued me too. So
I mean, it's
good to hear more in depth about that.
Very intriguing, and to have a guy like that that's just immersed in it, and you can tell that. I mean, it's just. It oozes from him. That's where he wants to be. That's what he wants to do. And I think that's 99% of it. Once something like that's in you, man, it's just there forever.
Gets a hold of you. That's for sure. We were there for, I think 7 days, and it was not long enough. I mean, if you're going to make that trip, it needs to be bare minimum 2 weeks, I think, to really kind of dig your feet in and see,
see what it's all about.
Yeah, we were in Anchorage. We hiked flat top there in Anchorage, and we ran out, saw Connect Glacier, took the side-by-side trip out and did that, and then went down to Seward for a couple days, took a boat out, stayed on an island a couple nights, came back in. I mean, it was cool. The Sea and Wildlife Center there and Seward was really neat to see and stuff, and it felt like the trip was over as we were just getting going,
Yeah, and still to this day, my mom and dad will even say that Alaska is probably one of their most favorite trips that they have done. Of course, they did it via cruise ship, but they still talk about it. They still love it. They say they'd go back, so maybe they will one day.
Yeah, I don't think I'd do a cruise ship. I think you need to get your feet on the ground and.
Yeah, they're older.
Do some driving and see it that way, but
I think that'd be pretty amazing. I've not made it there, but maybe one day. Maybe one day I'll get to film your goat hunt. I might have to start doing some mountain climbing.
Come along to film the caribou hunt, maybe.
I just keep the bush planes away from me because nah. I think Excuse me. I think I'd be fine. It's the bush planes that scare me. I just don't know if I'm down with landing on a creek bed, man.
Those look like fun. All the stuff I saw you ramp your four-wheeler off of back in the day and land to nothing, and you're scared of a bush plane.
Absolutely. Terrified. The difference is 24 to 42.
Yeah.
It's just just doesn't sound as much fun. I get nervous. Getting nervous in my old age. Oh man. Well, thank you guys for watching. Thank you for listening. Check out this episode and others on Spotify, Samsung Podcast,
Podbean.
I think we're on Pandora now. We're in a lot of places. We're in a lot of places. iHeartRadio, maybe.
If you can't
Amazon,
find us, you're not looking very hard.
Just don't look on Apple because we're not there. Because
I've got to get that figured out. It's on the list.
We can't figure it out. We get busy and then we forget. So we apologize, Apple users, and we thank you for listening. Google. We're on Google Podcast because Google was easy. But yeah, check out Jackson Kayak, jacksonkayak.com. Flex Drive Mark IV. We've got those on sale in the store right now. We've got 15% off at select dealers for 2022 and other closeout models. Orion Coolers, the big price drop. We've been talking about it for a month now, and the price drop's real. We're cheaper than Yeti. We're better. And
we're not floating around the ocean.
We're not floating around in the ocean. They're grizzly bear proof. I can show you the sticker. Not right now, but maybe tomorrow. Check Orion Coolers Instagram feed. But anyway, check us out. Orion Coolers on the IG. And we'll see you guys back here in 2 weeks for the next Orion podcast, which will be the 18th, October 18th.
Right before I make it home for a hunting trip.
There you go. And then we'll see you back here Thursday. Dock Talk, Jackson Kayak Dock Talk. We've got another select group of guys coming back on for the show. It's going to be another good one. We're going to let these guys argue and tell you all about fishing. So with that being said, we will see you guys on the next one. Bye-bye.
Later.